We've got a great panel discussion. I want to give a very brief introduction of each of the panelists, then we'll get right into the discussion. First off, a name very and face very familiar with all of you, Mark Indris. Mark is Car Global's Chief Innovation Officer and President of TradeRev, the startup he co-founded that facilitates real-time live bidding dealer-to-dealer vehicle auctions via mobile app and desktop. In this role, Mark focuses on diversifying TradeRev's product and service offerings while accelerating growth across North America and really around the globe. He began his career as a startup software firm, with a startup software firm in 1999 while working toward a bachelor's degree in human biology and computer science at the University of Toronto. I think you wanted to be a doctor, right?
Yeah, I did.
Changed direction on that.
A little bit.
Mark actually worked as a car salesman for a Toronto-based dealership and then worked his way up in the family business to eventually own 10 dealerships under the Indris Automotive Group brand. And Mark, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We also have Christian Anderson. Well, first we'll go to Mike Langelier. We'll go in order here. My fault.
Just couldn't help yourself.
I couldn't help myself. I'm so excited that you're here. Mike Langelier is president and CEO at TechPoint. This is an organization that is Indiana's technology growth initiative, really supportive of technology and innovation, entrepreneurship, not only here in central Indiana, but around the state. In 2010, Mike co-founded MyJive, a personal finance and banking software company. He sold that company in November of 2011. Prior to starting MyJive, Mike was Director of Account Management for Experian, which was formerly Baker Hill, where he managed multi-million-dollar bank and credit union relationships, enterprise software installations, and key partnerships. Mike is a DePaul University graduate and a past fellow in the OR Fellowship Program, which, if you aren't familiar with that, many of you I'm sure are, is an unbelievable program here in the city and the state, and has really helped to attract and keep talent in our state as well. Mike, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Gerry.
And last but not least, Christian Anderson, co-founder and partner at High Alpha. Prior to High Alpha, Christian founded Studio Science, a leading design and innovation consultancy that he sold in 2019. He is an active angel investor and previously co-founded Gravity Ventures, a seed stage venture fund, and numerous software companies, including Octave, Lessonly, Visible, Pathagility. In addition to serving on several corporate boards, Christian is actively involved in various philanthropic and nonprofit endeavors and a big supporter of technology in Indianapolis and in Indiana. So thank you one and all for being here. And I'll kind of, I guess, kick it off. Mike, I'll kick it off with you as the TechPoint representative here from a kind of a global perspective. I've heard you talk about this. North America is now in its third wave of emerging tech hubs. You know, first there was Silicon Valley, and the next wave was Austin and Boulder. Now Indianapolis and similar cities, some in the Midwest, but similar sized cities, are finding their space as technology epicenters, and Indianapolis in particular getting a lot of attention, a lot of mojo, if you will, in that regard. Talk about that and how Indianapolis fits into this broader picture.
Sure. Yeah, we're in kind of a jump ball moment, to use the basketball analogy, where we've had now two primary eras of tech ecosystem growth with the Bay Area, Seattle, Denver, some of those, Bay Area and Seattle, and then secondarily places like Austin and Denver, New York, Chicago, et cetera.
Toronto.
And Toronto.
Yeah.
Second, third, yeah. We are now in this third era where it's really up for grabs, and that opportunity really is now open to communities in other parts of the country that it wasn't really available to in the past. And I think that it avails itself to us uniquely for a couple different reasons. One of them is that the historical places where the tech ecosystems were born have now structural challenges around cost and congestion, availability of talent, transience of talent, all those kinds of factors that just make the fundamentals of growing and scaling companies difficult. And so that plays to our favor. The second is that technology, what technology is intersecting is changing. It used to be very much the company's B2C kind of web apps, a lot of kind of IT infrastructure companies played well toward places like the Bay Area and Seattle. Now that's changing now, and evidenced by the fact that we're here today. It's where technology intersects other industries, and a lot of times industries that were born in places like here. Industries like manufacturing, logistics, life sciences, healthcare, et cetera, are the big opportunities where the application of technology will create the next big business opportunities. And so again, that plays toward our favor. And so I think that particularly as we look at the Midwest region and mid-sized cities, Indianapolis is really uniquely placed. And I think that we should seize upon that opportunity. And I think that Indianapolis is uniquely placed for a couple different reasons as well. One, unlike a lot of particularly mid-sized cities around the country, we've had a disproportionate amount of success, particularly from software companies. Not very many cities our size can say that they've now had $7 billion in acquisitions and IPOs of tech companies over about a decade's time period. That gives us a head start. We have a history of public and private partnership working very successfully to be able to take on big, ambitious goals. Now we need to deploy that toward helping to create a digital economy, a tech economy that can succeed in the future, and more than anything, attract the talent and the entrepreneurs and the businesses here that are necessary.
Christian, if you could add on to that, because I think your perspective is really important, because if as you have said before, you don't really have a dog in the fight, IU or Purdue or Indiana, whatever the case might be. Yeah, exactly, Arkansas. But you are a big supporter and a big believer in what's happening here. Why so?
For sure. Yeah, I was sharing with Mark earlier. I only have one son, and I named him Indy. So anyone who questions my affection for the city can go jump in a lake. I believe, I know that it's all about talent. And unfortunately, it's a zero-sum game, meaning there are cities that will win, and as they win, other cities will necessarily lose. And keying off of this kind of third wave, the reason we're uniquely positioned to capitalize now is that for the first time ever, really, you can really start a business anywhere. You can really go work for a business regardless of where they're located anywhere. And today, because of the preponderance of capital, that capital will flow wherever the best ideas and best entrepreneurs are. And I think that's one of the things we've seen in Indy is we're not like most of our Rust Belt brethren, right? We really outperform, we outcompete. We look a lot more like a Sun Belt city located in the Midwest than we do a Midwestern city. And that's because we're winning on some level that battle for talent. But I think, as Mayor Hogsett indicated, you cannot take your foot off the gas. And now is the time where we've created a little bit of separation, specifically regionally, but we really need to mash down, because ambition is contagious. And we've seen these little bitty, and in some cases even large kind of successes, and the only thing that keeps that flywheel spinning is more of those.
Mike touched on this, but that intersection of technology and innovation across multiple sectors, and Mark certainly, I think, Car Global, TradeRev, great examples of that. Car Global, a traditional auto auction company, now all about technology. Certainly Tom Linebarger at Cummins, he said, we're not an engine company, we're a technology company. So talk about that and how technology is really revolutionary.
Yeah. So, Car Global, traditionally a physical auction company, 70 plus auctions across North America, but more than half those cars are sold digitally. And even the ones that are sold physically in lanes, the people are on technology constantly. So really, we're a technology company. And from getting cars on to using AI to determine who should buy what cars, to how we're using AI to how we capture cars.
We'll talk about growing that model, model that's built on technology here in Indianapolis as opposed to Toronto.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's exactly what Michael said. These cities, and not that Toronto's like Silicon Valley or New York, but it's pretty close. And we have this transient technologists that are moving. Like, to keep people more than 18 months is a real challenge, and it's not paid, right? Because we have Amazon, we have Google, we have everybody there, and there is a lot of talent in this city. And that was one of the reasons we opened this office, was to have that talent here, and also in our newly opened headquarters in Carmel. and we have 250,000 square feet there, 45,000 square feet here. We want to get talent wherever it is because people can work wherever, whenever, and we're constantly working cross-border with our software teams.
Mike, talk about that whole talent attraction, retention initiative, or I should say initiatives, because there are multiple efforts going on, TechPoint among them, with some high-profile efforts. Talk about why it's important and the success, the traction that's beginning to happen with that whole talent attraction piece.
I fundamentally believe that in this digital world, in this tech-driven era that we're living in, that we have to treat talent as more than just an accidental asset, something that we need to think of akin to a level of infrastructure that a city needs, in the same way that a city has to be mindful. And there was a period in time when businesses and civic partners came together and said, hey, we all need water, we all need electricity. In this new economy, there's a new level of foundational infrastructure that's required, and it's talent, and it's capital, and it's business acceleration. All of those resources are now the new level of infrastructure that's required. And so we and several other organizations have been really intentional about standing up pipelines to be able to supply, so that any business that's present here or is contemplating a place to call home can scan the landscape and say, where can I get access to talent? And we can say, you can plug into this, 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 and this. And so if you want university talent, boom, here's the extern program or the OR fellowship. If you want experienced talent that's out that you need to recruit from out of market, here's Red Carpet Experience. If you need in-market talent, boom, here's the solution for that. And so by having all of this infrastructure, this kind of like APIs ready and available for companies to plug into, our bet is that will give Indy a competitive advantage into the future.
Give us a brief comment, if you would, on a statistic that I think is great, the Indy Extern program, which attracts interns for summers, right?
Yep.
The summer connect from all over the country, dozens and dozens from universities and places all over the country. But you survey them when they come to town, they experience Indianapolis, they survey them on their thoughts about Indianapolis coming in, and also when they exit.
Yeah, so the program that Gary's referencing is this college, this is the university pipeline. So this preeminent college internship experience that we created 7 years ago, and we said, let's create this top shelf experience that's including free housing, a paid internship, the summer of your life of immersion in the city and social activities and professional development activities, and then let's go recruit the best talent in the country to be part of it. And now for this year's class, we expect about 175 in the summer of 2020 class. We had almost 2,000 applicants that came from 212 universities and 45 home states. So it gives us a really great sample size to be able to say, okay, what do they know about Indy and this tech ecosystem before and then after? And what we know, and this has been fairly true for each of the years, is that when they come in, they're only about 20-ish, 20 to 30% say that they were likely to live and work in Indy before graduation. After the program, it's over 75%. Before the program, those that had a positive impression of Indy, again, was in the 20 or so percent. About 50% had no real impression. It wasn't even a big negative, it was just a lack of impression. After the program, 90 to 95% have a positive impression. So the good news is that we can take away from that, when you curate the city experience and the work experience and you serve it up to people in the right way, it's compelling.
I think that's the main point, though. I think curating that city experience, it's not just about enabling them to learn and get these new skills. It's like, how do you retain them to live here? Because now they have skills that they can go market, to your point, anywhere.
Yep.
How do you keep them in the city? And you have to create a city that has a basketball team, a football team, and great restaurants, great art. Mary talked about that, great culture. People don't just want to work. There's quality of life, transportation, start having families. You got to move out of the city. How do I get back into town? We struggle with that a lot in Toronto as we were outside the city and we couldn't get enough talent. We had to move in. We had to be somewhere central where we had lots of transportation options where people lived outside of the city as well. So.
I've got to believe this space for TradeRev and of course the really cool corporate headquarters for Car Global in Carmel. It's about culture and about that talent piece as well.
It's all about culture. The amount of new resumes we get just by being here, by just all the technology that we're creating in both locations is incredible. So it's been a big win.
Christian, add on to that if you would in terms of the talent piece and how important you feel that is, and your view of Indianapolis and more broadly Indiana, and maybe if there's some additional things that the state, the city, others, organizations can do on that quality of life, quality of place piece.
Well, I'm glad it's the mayor that's here, not the governor, because I have a contention that I think is accurate, which is that people live in cities, not in states. Mm-hmm. And so we want to kind of conflate Indy and Indiana, and I realize that there are people whose it's their job to figure that out, but I make a big distinction between the two. I believe that Indy is a desirable place to live. As I mentioned earlier, the flywheel is in fact spinning, and two things have to continue to happen in parallel. One, as Mike was talking about, there's this kind of just drumbeat of infrastructure, programming. How do you raise up the next generation of talent and local entrepreneurs? And how do you do that systematically and systemically? But I also believe that there need to be enormous bets placed that signal to the rest of the nation and ultimately the world that, you know, Indy's open for business and that we're thinking incredibly, ambitiously. You know, the best way to recruit talent to the state is for there to be great businesses here, period. And I know there's the chicken and the egg discussion about, well, you know, how do you get a job in broadcasting or retail if you don't have retail experience? But, you know, the best thing we can do is create the context for businesses to flourish and to grow unencumbered as quickly as possible and generate as much success, and I know it's vulgar to say this, but as much wealth as possible, because that splashes back into the ecosystem and creates even more. And so when we think foundationally, structurally about what needs to be true, at the risk of this sounding a little too economic developish, we need to be a great place to do business. We need to be a place where government enables and or gets out of the way. And finally, we need to be a place where our citizenry itself are our number one recruiters and our number one evangelists. You will note, you walk through the streets of Austin, I like to give Austin a hard time, but one really funny thing is they have a t-shirt that says, "Welcome to Austin, please don't move here." And what that's kind of symbolic of is they're like, this place is so great. Yeah. And it permeates the talk track of the layperson. And what's cool is you were seeing that in Indy. Mm-hmm. You were beginning to see everybody, the layperson included, beginning to become an economic development evangelist. But we've got more work to do there.
Yeah. Mark, in terms of the academic institutions, you talk about assets, the businesses, the city and state cooperation, collaboration. But Purdue, I think recently christened a $40 million data science facility and have made numerous other investments. IU has done the same thing in Bloomington, Indianapolis, and other locations. But 30 private institutions. You've got Notre Dame in the north as well. How important are those academic institutions to what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, extremely important. There's this kind of a saying that says, most of the world's software is built by co-ops, right? Mm-hmm. We have a lot of co-ops, and we leverage our university connections a lot. They actually foster all the innovation. We do, hackathons at the universities. They bring in ideas, they create new technologies. All of AI was born out of what you guys see now in modern AI is born out of the universities. So these relationships are extremely important. I think how they treat their IP laws and how that works can kind of confuse the matter, but we've leveraged our university connections a lot. We're in all the career fairs, a lot of partnerships on new research and development. Mm-hmm. So I think it's incredibly important.
Mike, what's next? We've talked a lot about the increasing presence of co-working spaces, not only here in the region, but around the state of Indiana. The startups, and Christian mentioned successful people like on this stage are putting money back in and investing and reinvesting in companies. High Alpha, what's happened there? Mm-hmm. Lots of things we can talk about, but what's next, or what needs to happen next to continue that momentum, that flywheel continuing to spin?
I would say three main areas. All has to be fueled by talent, but we have to have our high promise startups break out to be to be good-sized scale-ups, growing at a fast pace, being the next generation of successful companies. And I think to the degree that we need to augment that by recruiting and importing companies from other places. So we need to have a homegrown strategy and an import strategy. And we need to be aggressive about it. That's something that's never really been done before, and that's something that we're doing now. I also think that we need to the ambitious bets, that needs to be born not only in the startups, but also in the big coasts that are here too. And that's actually where we're seeing some of these ambitious bets born. Like even when I hear about from Tom, hearing about CAR and how leveraging, taking a market that a lot of people don't see is kind of an invisible market to so many people, and hearing how many millions of cars are transacted every year, and a huge portion of the market share that's being transacted by CAR, and that it's being facilitated by drones flying over these huge lots and inventorying the stock by using drone technology, algorithms to be able to evaluate damage on a car and assess how much it's going to cost to repair it. All those kinds of things that they need to be evangelized so that then the talent base understands the size of the opportunity, and that then we can push more resources that way.
Discussion about there's all these businesses that are traditionally not software businesses, but everything now is a software business. So all these industries, like the automotive industry, where most people don't realize, like you said, over 11 million cars traded between dealers in North America, right? And so technology is going to be in every silo, and health sciences. I think that's one of the most important ones that we should be working on right now, and I know that's really big in Indiana right now as well. So
we're up against time. I don't want to go over, but I do want to, because something you said, Mike, and that next big thing, and Christian, you mentioned it too, that Indiana needs to do that next big thing. Are we as a state culturally? We've always been resistant to change. I think that's changing. Daylight saving time. Alcohol on Sunday, we're making some progress. But are we as a state culturally ready to do it, to compete with Nashville and some of these other markets that seem to be making moves that are putting them more on the map?
Can I jump on this one?
Yeah.
All right, so first of all, I think this whole, for the last 10 years, people would sit on panels like this and they'd say things like, well, Indiana, we're too humble and we need to do a better job of telling, which, every community that's not San Francisco and New York says that, right? That's not like a unique thing to us, right? I would say that, in fact, without being too hyperbolic, that we have a quantifiable historic legacy of big bets, big bold bets, ambitious bets. So it's not like we've got to figure out how to do that. And I do think maybe we need to rediscover a bit of that, but I think we need to reframe what we mean by big bet. I think if there's room for us as a city and ultimately as a state to think differently, and it's the last time I'll mention ambition, I promise, but people are comfortable kind of choking up on the bat and going for doubles and triples, but what we really do need is we need some home runs. We need some really audacious goals that if they don't work out, a lot of people are going to get fired. And that's the way I kind of think about measuring it, right? If a whole lot of people don't lose their jobs or don't get reelected, we're not like swinging hard enough. And there are ways to cheat, and frankly, when you're an undersized dude getting into the ring, you need to figure out how to pick fights you're built to win. You need to cheat. And so I think there's a personal experience here, guys. So I think there are a handful, we don't have time to get into them, but there are a handful of ideas that have been advanced over the last few years that I think the first response is, well, that'll never get passed, that'll never happen, X, Y, and Z. That we're going to have to move beyond, because right now we are out competing many of our geographic brethren. But if you look to the south, if you look to the Atlantas and to the Nashvilles and to the Austins of the world, there's a lot of separation there, and we're going to have to do something really dynamic in order to keep up the pace.
It's a great way to end the conversation. How about a big round of applause for a great panel? Thank you.